Emily Johnson was the housekeeper at a luxurious hotel. She was a simple woman and never imagined she would fall for one of the guests, much less for Michael Thompson, a tech mogul who owned several successful companies and was a frequent visitor to the hotel. Yet there he was, standing by the window, watching her with a subtle but undeniable interest. Michael's eyes, blue like the ocean on a clear morning, fixed on her as he approached. "A beautiful day to enjoy the view, don't you think?" he said, his voice deep and warm, breaking the silence between them. Emily turned quickly, startled. It wasn't the first time he had spoken to her, but something about that exchange of glances sent a shiver down her spine. She smiled, but it was a cautious smile, filled with the wisdom of someone who had learned to keep her distance from the empty promises of men like Michael. "Yes, Mr. Thompson," she replied, trying to maintain a professional tone. "The hotel's view is wonderful." He stepped closer, his movements smooth but deliberate. There was something about him that challenged the boundaries of his calculated demeanor, something that slipped through his polished exterior. His presence seemed to intoxicate the air around them. Emily swallowed hard as she felt him approach, her heart beating faster. His voice seemed to float, and the smile he gave her was both seductive and genuine. She wasn't sure what he wanted, but what worried her most was how he stirred something deep inside her. She was used to receiving flirtatious remarks from guests, and always kept her distance untouchable. But something about him, in that moment, awakened an uncontrollable feeling, a certain attraction perhaps. What she didn't know was that a bet had been made. David Miller, Michael's longtime friend, had challenged him to win over the young housekeeper. David, who had tried and failed to win Emily's heart with expensive gifts and sweet words, doubted Michael's ability to get close to her in a more effective way. Yes, for Michael it was easy to win over any woman. He was incredibly attractive and had a substantial bank account, which allowed him to always present himself impeccably. With a mischievous smile, Michael accepted the challenge. He wanted to prove to himself that he could win Emily's heart, even if it was just to win the bet. However, as he spent more time with Emily, he began to notice her more, and something in his chest, far from reason, began to change. He didn't know how or why, but when he looked at her, when he was near her, the world around them seemed to fade away. A few times, he considered calling off the bet with David, because he realized she was a special woman. Despite being 35, he had never met a woman who intrigued him as much as Emily, and the shame of admitting that his initial interest in her had come from a bet among friends? No, he couldn't bring himself to tell her that. And so little by little, Michael began to court Emily, because he was genuinely interested in her, not because of the bet. At first, she saw him as just another rich, charming man trying to impress her with flowers, expensive dinners, and words of admiration that mixed with the coldness of his calculated gestures. But as time passed, Emily began to notice something more. He treated her with great attention, as if she were more than just a housekeeper. When they were together, he treated her as an equal. Michael wasn't like the others, that much I can tell you. But the bet he accepted from his friend was certainly not an honorable act. Although Emily's heart was wary of Michael's true intentions, she was too interested in getting to know him better, and allowed herself to go out with him a few times. During their early dates, he laughed with her in a simple way, made jokes about the world he lived in, and seemed enchanted by her honest and straightforward view of life. However, it was during a candlelit dinner that something changed irreversibly. Worried that she might one day discover the truth, he said, "Did you know, Emily, that the sound of the waves breaks in the rhythm of an untold secret?" he said, looking at the horizon with a nearly melancholic smile. "I have many secrets, many that I can't share." Emily didn't fully understand what he meant, but she was deeply in love, and the moment was magical. The candlelit setting, the soft music, the wine, and the presence of a handsome, kind man were too much for her. It all felt like a fairy tale. Yet despite feeling intoxicated by the love she was experiencing, she remained on guard. She thought to herself, "Can I really trust his words? I'm just a housekeeper. What could a man with his wealth possibly want with me? Nothing." That night was truly special. After dinner, Michael invited her to his hotel room. At first she refused, but eventually she accepted. Michael was deeply in love and wanted to spend the night with Emily. As they entered the room, he embraced her and said, "Emily, I want you like I've never wanted any woman in my life. I never thought about getting married, but with you I would marry without a doubt." Emily smiled and kissed him. He was also very special to her, and for that reason, she was breaking the hotel's rules about not getting involved with guests. Michael couldn't deny to himself that he loved her. Gently, he pulled her closer, wrapping his arms around her waist. He lowered his lips to hers and kissed her softly. Emily closed her eyes and stayed like that for a few seconds. Michael continued to caress her, sliding a hand over her chest. Emily gasped, arching her back as Michael massaged her tenderly. He rocked his hips, pressing his warmth against her with gentle thrusts. Her body moved with his, matching his rhythm. She liked it and wanted more. Her thighs tightened. The kisses grew more intense, and Emily moaned, reaching up to caress him firmly. With that, Michael couldn't hold back, and began to explore her intimately with a desperate need. Emily gasped, holding his head between her hands to keep his lips close to hers. The silence of the night was broken only by Emily's moans, as she writhed in pleasure she had never felt before. She was there, in that hotel room, trusting and giving herself, for the first time in her life, to a man she loved and believed loved her. "Oh yes, like that," she whispered, her voice soft, murmuring passionate words into his ear. She breathed as fast as he did, rocking her hips harder as he increased the pace. "This is," he groaned. "So exciting, Emily." Michael moaned, whispering words filled with passion and desire. His words were sinful. For a moment, Emily thought she should tell him to stop, but she couldn't. She was too in love with him, and for him, in that moment, she would do anything crazy. And she did. Morning had already broken when Emily woke up, and left the room before Michael woke, as it was time for her to start her shift. Later, she entered Michael's room, not as the woman who had spent the night in his arms, but as the hotel housekeeper, there to clean the room. Emily was very happy, having spent her first night of love with Michael, the man she loved. She felt even happier knowing she was loved by him. She began cleaning, humming a soft tune. She needed to stop dreaming and finish her work. And that's when Emily discovered the truth. While putting clean towels in the closet, she accidentally saw the note Michael and David had exchanged, detailing the cruel bet. Pain cut through her chest like a cold blade. He, the man she thought loved her, had treated her like a trophy, a prize. "How could you?" she whispered, her voice trembling as the note shook in her hands. "I gave you everything." At that moment, Michael walked into the room, and her eyes burned, but not with love. They burned with pain, with anger. Seeing the scene, he understood everything. "Emily, please," he began, his voice low, filled with regret. It wasn't supposed to be like this. I love you. I really do. You can't imagine how much this was wrong." Emily looked at him, her heart torn between fury and pain. She wanted to believe him, to surrender to the love she felt growing inside her. But how could she? How could she trust someone who had used her? "You lied to me, you jerk." Her voice was broken but firm. "You don't love me. You wanted me because of a bet, because it was part of a game." The silence between them stretched as Michael struggled to find the words to redeem himself. But deep down he knew, no words would ever be enough. Emily, her chest tight, turned and walked away without looking back. She didn't know what the future held, but one thing she knew for sure. She would no longer be a bet in a game played by men. She was more than that. Emily left, leaving Michael and the hotel behind on the same night she discovered the truth. He remained there, in the darkness, his trembling hands searching for meaning in the confusion that filled his chest. The next morning, Michael's heart was shattered, as if the pain of losing Emily was the only real thing in the world. He went to the hotel management and found out Emily had left. Where to? No one knew. Emily returned to her hometown to live with her parents while trying to rebuild her life and heal the wound in her soul. But it was hard. No matter how much she tried, her love for Michael and the memory of being used still hurt deeply. Time passed, turning into months. Emily now worked as a florist in her town, but the memory of Michael still haunted her heart. One sunny afternoon, as Emily was arranging flowers, she heard, "I found you at last." She didn't need to look up to know who it was. I've been looking for you all these months, Emily. Emily. Michael's voice was hoarse, broken. He didn't know how to start, but the words flowed from his heart. I know I can't change what I did or erase the lies. But I love you. Truly. I was a fool, a man lost in a meaningless game. I was a jerk. But what I feel for you is real. I don't want to live in a world where you're not with me. Emily looked at him, her eyes narrowing, still wary. She knew he was trying, but was it enough? She had been hurt, and to forgive, she needed more than empty promises. You say you love me, Michael. Her voice trembled but was firm. But what you did wasn't just a lie. It was a betrayal of what I believed was our bond. I don't know if I can trust you again. He stepped closer, his hands slightly trembling as he handed her a small box. What he wanted to offer wasn't a shallow apology, but a symbol of his love. I didn't lie when I said I love you. And to prove that my love for you is real. At that moment he opened the box, took out a ring and said, "Will you forgive me and marry me?" Emily looked at him, her eyes wet but without tears. The internal conflict was tormenting her. She wanted to believe him. I don't know, Michael. I don't know if I can go back to being the same. You shook everything I believed was true. She looked at him, and this time her voice was softer. But I also don't know if I can live loving you forever, without having you by my side. Forgive me, Emily, he whispered, sincerity in every word. I didn't think about the consequences. I was a real jerk. It was a stupid bet. And before I knew it, I was in love with you and afraid of losing you if I told you the truth. Emily looked at him, her eyes still filled with pain, but also with a hope she didn't know still existed in her heart. The love between them, though fragile, was there, silently pulsing, and perhaps forgiveness was the only path to healing. She took a deep breath and finally, with a painful lightness, said, "I accept your proposal, Michael." Michael smiled, that smile which, even without words, said everything he felt. And so, a man who had acted like a jerk acknowledged his mistake and received forgiveness. Michael and Emily, hand in hand, began to walk a path that, for the first time, was built on trust, patience, and above all, true love. Do you agree or disagree with Emily's decision to forgive Michael? Your opinion matters to us.